Welcome to Bat Therapy, mental health through the lens of comics and film. Be a fly on the wall or a bat in the cave, listening in on a friendship built out of a love for talking Batman, comics, and the everyday struggle to achieve mental health and happiness.
We're your hosts, clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown and educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube and social media and find our Patreon at patreon.com/battherapy.
This podcast is about providing education and understanding and is not a replacement for mental health treatment or support. If you're needing help, go to bat-therapy.com for resources.
All right, let's talk about vigilante lawyers. Yeah, I feel like this is very apropos considering. So we were supposed to record this episode in January,
Yes.
and then I kept getting sick,
Yes.
and so we kept having to delay it. And now it's early February, and I feel like these are my kindred spirits now. We'll go into it, but
Yeah.
it feels like a very timely thing to talk about. Lawyers who break the law. What's going on here?
The art of the mistrial.
The art of the mistrial. Yes,
Yeah.
there you go.
I tell you, yeah. So yeah, we're gonna be talking about Daredevil and She-Hulk.
Yep.
I'm excited because they're very, very different shows and also very different characters,
Yes.
right? Like, because
It was very jarring to go from one show to the other.
well, yeah, and also not even just one show to the other, but Jennifer Walters and Matt Murdock are not like two sides of the same coin. They're so
No.
vastly different, but also they're kind of banging now in canon, which is
I
also
know.
great.
I had totally forgotten that. And so when I was rewatching She-Hulk, I was like, oh wow, okay. Let's do
Yeah.
this thing. And
Yeah.
it's interesting because like they have a lot in common, and yet they really don't.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the particularly interesting things about it is they're both lawyers. They both have superpowers. I guess I don't know if Daredevils are technically thought of that way, but essentially they're superpowered.
Yeah.
They do vigilante work. But honestly, aside from that, they're extremely different from each other.
Very.
Which is so interesting because when we came up with this topic, we're like, oh hey, let's group them together. They're both lawyers and yet they're doing the vigilante work, and how does that make sense? And let's talk about the ethics and just the complicated nature. And here you have two people doing the exact same thing, but it looks very, very different.
Yeah, and honestly, and I would even say they're doing the exact same thing because the thing is, what Jennifer's doing is like everyone knows. Everyone
Sure.
knows who she is. Everyone knows that like she is a lawyer, but also she represents specifically the superpowered division, and
Because she essentially outed herself because something
right.
happened right in front of her, and she said, ooh, let me, make sure these people don't get hurt.
Right. Yeah. And so she's very, very different than, oh, I'm a blind lawyer that moonlights as a vigilante, and no one would ever believe anybody if someone was
Fair.
like, hey,
Yeah.
he's the Daredevil. Like, oh, really?
Which, P.S., he's super sketchy. Like, watching all these
Absolutely.
things back again, it's like, oh my God. I mean, you're technically blind, but you're also not blind.
You're
And
not
so,
blind.
like,
You're so not blind.
you're
Like,
so not blind. I mean, anyway. So a little sketchy sketch, in my opinion.
definitely.
But I would actually argue that he moonlights as a lawyer. Where, like,
Oh, that's true.
you know what I
I'll
mean?
give
So
you that.
what struck me about them, I feel very drawn to She-Hulk now because I feel like she went into all this with the purest of intentions, wanting to right the world, make a better place as a lawyer. She didn't start by like doing all this sketchy stuff for a bunch
Mm-mm.
of rich superheroes. It's not
No,
how it
not at
started.
all.
She just got that was the only thing she could get
Mm-hmm.
once people were like, how do we let a superhero be a lawyer? So she went into all this with the purest of intentions. Then she gets hulked out through no fault of her own, and it the vigilantism comes to her. It's like something happens and she reacts,
Yeah.
and so she uses it when it's almost like it like falls into her lap and like, oh, here are scenarios where this is going to be helpful. Let me use it. Versus you talk Matt Murdock, here you got someone where, let's be real, he always wanted to beat people up.
Yeah.
And he
Those
was
Murdoch boys
trying,
got the devil in them.
yeah, he has always wanted to beat people up.
Yeah, definitely.
And he said, okay, to honor my dad, I'm going to try and go a different route. He always wanted me to go to school and this, that, and the other. So he's trying to put himself into the lawyer box. And don't get me wrong, he really cares about people. That caring is still there. But he's more a vigilante that happens to be a lawyer on the side. And I feel like she's a lawyer that happens to be a vigilante on the side.
Right. Right. Yeah, definitely. I agree. I agree. Because she didn't really get into it to fight crime. It's
Right.
just that happens to be really convenient to have a super strong lawyer when
Yeah.
depending on who you're representing and what's going down, right?
Yep.
And so yeah, it definitely makes it really interesting. I also love that like not only do you have that contrast between her and Daredevil, but in her show specifically, the huge contrast between her and her cousin Bruce.
Oh,
Um,
sure. Yeah. That's also super interesting.
yeah, because he has this very strong opinion and idea of exactly who she's supposed to be, and she's like,
Yep.
no, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing. Like, I feel like it didn't take her long to figure it out. Like I feel
Because it
like
didn't. God,
she kind of got a rhythm pretty quick.
I loved, okay. She had struggles. They were different struggles than what Bruce had.
Yeah,
And what it just, look, it's a man's world, and at least here in the United States, and women, we're just living in it.
right.
And so there are these moments where all these expectations and things were set up, and then here she strolls in, and she's actually a better fit for a lot of this Hulk stuff.
Right.
And it was very interesting to see. He understandably was trying to guide her, help her understand,
Hmm.
make sure she knew these paths and ways. But then it became very clear very quickly that your experience is not my experience, and we can't just assume that I have to respond the same way that you did. Yeah,
Hmm.
all that stuff is really interesting. And then also when she connects with Matt Murdock, you can tell that they've got different ways of maneuvering the whole lawyer piece, the whole vigilante piece.
Definitely.
And that's one of the things I really like about the She-Hulk show is it is okay, how do we maneuver these things outside of the box a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And plus, I do, like I said, it contrasting that with Daredevil, who lies to literally every person he meets. Like
Yeah.
Matt Murdock is just like it is next level with him. And plus, he just has his life is just so complicated between
Yeah.
Elektra and the Hand and dealing with Frank Castle. Like he just his and Bullseye and Fisk again and then Fisk again. Like his he is just never standing still. He's always beat to a pulp. Like I do if I had to
And that's
pick,
all he knows.
yeah, that's all he does. That's true.
That's literally from childhood. That is all he knows. He was
Yeah.
raised seeing his dad being
Hands.
beat to a pulp,
Yeah.
and that's how they move through life. Like, I'm not even sure he probably would sit it would probably be so uncomfortable for him if you took the punching bag piece away, as
Yeah.
strange as that might sound.
Yeah. Exactly. And like and it's just it's funny because it's like, okay, so he has this life where he grows up fighting. He clearly is a very good fighter,
Mm.
but it's the characters he interacts with. Like Foggy is such a good like a good friend and a good
Poor Foggy.
source. Like he's such a good friend versus like Elektra, who is like toxic enough to be a Captain Planet villain. Like it's so funny. Like this just his life is oh wow, okay, this is peaceful, but then something immediately comes in and it's like, nope, psych,
Yep.
no peace whatsoever.
Yep.
Also, this is Jessica Jones and Luke Cage and Iron Fist. Now you got to fight with them as well. Like it's just this non-stop.
It's
Like,
nonstop.
bro,
And
can you
he
relax?
no, he cannot. It's so there's this thing where if you grow up with a lot of turmoil and chaos, in some ways, and it's very hard to balance this because people can inadvertently shift into victim blaming. And that's not what I'm
Right.
meaning here.
Hmm.
But what can happen is your system, it attunes, it adapts to its surroundings, to the situations around it. And that becomes your baseline. That becomes what you're used to. And so something that's actually better for you, you might not naturally gravitate toward it because it's not what you're used to. It's not where your equilibrium has lied. And
Mm.
so absolutely, like, this is his norm, and honestly, if he had a choice, he'd probably always choose Hell's Kitchen
Right.
or a Hell's
Definitely.
Kitchen type place. That's where he feels at home. And now, I mean, like, there's development he has across time and all of these things, but he's very rough and ready. And you mentioned Foggy earlier, and I think Foggy is a really great example of they they have this other lawyer
Hmm.
sitting next to him, good friends. They went into this thing together. And when he finds out what Matt Murdock has been doing on the side, I feel like it's such a I love the turmoil that you see Foggy going through because he really is trying to figure out, like, can you still be a good person
Right.
while you are in the thick of it doing all of this violent stuff,
Right.
on top of claiming that you want law and order, and yet here you are dipping in and being a part of all the chaos. And
Yeah.
you just
Like,
see Foggy really trying to come to grips with that.
yeah, the nerve of this lawyer to be in here defending an assault charge. Like the
Yeah,
audacity.
yeah. Foggy is like really upset, and understandably so. I mean, he's like, what are we even fighting for?
Right. Right.
Especially um because of how things are in Hell's Kitchen, it's also very hard to know what Daredevil is and what he's about. And so, granted, like, Foggy's coming from a place of thinking that Daredevil might be on the side of Fisk, potentially even at the start.
Hmm.
There's a lot they don't know about him. But the interesting thing is, you would expect Foggy would be like, oh, Daredevil must be good because it's Matt Murdock. But
Right.
instead, it goes the other way, and he goes, wait, there are some really big things I didn't know about Matt Murdock.
Right.
And it shifts his feelings about his friend rather than his
Yeah.
feelings about the vigilante out there, and that's telling.
Of course. Well, absolutely. Because first of all, you are living a complete lie because, like you said, he's not blind. Daredevil,
No,
he's
he doesn't
he
see
has
like, quote,
vision
normal
impairment,
people.
but he sees better than everyone else. Like it is a superpower. And
He's like,
for
oh, I'm blind because I see everybody on fire. I'm like, what? No,
like what?
then you
That's
just have fire
bullshit.
vision.
Get
What are you
out of
talking
here.
about?
Get the hell out of here with that. Like
Ugh.
miss me with that. Like, and it's one of those things. Like if I had a blind best friend and I found out like 20 years later, by the way, you know how I said I was blind? I'm actually not. And I'm one of the best hand-to-hand fighters
Yeah.
in the MCU. Like the way that I would feel absolutely betrayed. The number of times I've held the door for this person or said watch out when he was pretending to walk into a fire hydrant.
Mm,
The number of times I was worried about him. Like, wait, don't walk down that street. It's
yeah.
dangerous. Wait for me to get there and I'll walk with you. Like the number of times all of these things happened. And then all of a sudden, every single bit of it was a
Yeah.
lie. I would be absolutely sick to my stomach. Like, yeah, it would be really bad.
Not to mention the number of women who have undressed in front of him thinking he can't see her. It like happens in like episode 1 or 2, and I was like, what? What?
Oh God. Yeah, that's not good.
Nope, not good. Hey,
Shame on you, Matt
hey,
Murdock.
I was gonna say dudes, but hey, anybody. Like, you know,
Yeah,
don't do that. Gross. Just gross.
that's pretty ugh.
Yeah. So
Eesh.
gross.
Sleazy
So
lawyer.
yeah. So I mean, like,
So,
he's a complicated creature. Um
he
eh, eh,
doesn't do a lot of law, to be honest. Like looking at like throughout this
no,
show, like
he just kinda like figures out if people are lying or not.
yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, he's a glorified lie
Versus
detector machine.
Jennifer Walters versus She-Hulk. She loves the law. She's
She's busy.
always turning to the law.
Yeah, yeah,
She that's like that show is more about a lawyer who, oh crap, now I have powers and I'm forced to
yes,
figure out what to do with them.
yes,
Versus I have powers and I want to beat people up. And I, in some ways, I think Matt Murdock, he thrives in the legally gray areas or the areas where there's more criminal activity. That's where he thrives. But then I mean, like, don't get me wrong, like obviously he does some really good legal stuff. But if he had to choose, if he got to choose,
yeah.
I mean, he does the legal stuff. I think he cares about it. He's passionate about it. Um, but if he had to give one of them up, do we really think he'd give up being Daredevil over giving up being a lawyer?
I think so. Yeah, well, I don't think that he could. I do believe he would try, which I feel like
Oh
in
yeah,
some of the seasons he absolutely tried. I'm no
that's
longer
true.
Daredevil. And it's like, shut up.
Well, and
Like,
isn't that the
stop.
premise of like the new show that the new season that's coming out is like he
I
hasn't been
believe
Daredevil for a while?
I believe so. I believe so. I watched the trailer once and I
I
was
did
really
too, and I've
sleepy
been
when I
sick
watched
since
it.
then. Yeah, yeah. Same. It's like I wasn't really in the best mindset, so
Yeah.
I need to
Yeah.
rewatch it.
And so
But
it's one of those things where it's like, hey, he has to hide so much of it because it's not like he can go to a gym and hit the punching bag. They'd be like, man, how is this blind guy nailing the targets like this? Like, man, look at this guy. He kind of wait a minute. Like, like no one
oh,
would believe it, first of all. And
no.
so he's just working out in the dark, like in his like like in his apartment all the time. The way that they did him in this show, and this is going to sound absolutely wild here. It seems like Matt Murdock gets less sleep than Bruce Wayne. And I don't know how
I
that
think
is
you're right.
possible. I don't know how, well, it might just be he looks like he gets less sleep, but that's just the whole not having $1 billion thing. I think that like
Yeah, having $1 billion really helps you look nice.
it gets rid of the
Uh,
wrinkles.
yeah. Um, you're probably right that he sleeps less. He definitely gets beat up more. And
Yes.
I mean, it even takes him a long time to have like a legitimate outfit that is protective for him.
Yes.
And so, I mean, arguably that can make him good as a lawyer too, where he's not afraid to go and risk getting beat down, but just outlasting whoever it is on the opposite end. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, he really does some tough stuff. And look, there's a time for law, and he seems to recognize that. Now, I don't think he uses the law as much as he could.
Right.
Versus with Jennifer Walters, I think she does. And sometimes she might be more likely to skew trusting the law, but then if there's corruption and stuff going on, things not going her way maybe, versus he's going to skew more toward acting as if there's corruption and maybe not using the law where he could. So I
That's
think
true.
they kind of balance on opposite sides of that spectrum a little bit.
That's true. That's
But
true.
yeah, I definitely think he leans toward not trusting the systems.
Hmm.
um like there are times where he's probably getting information that you could probably go through the court system a little bit more effectively. But that being said, Fisk is his hands in everything. So
I was
as
gonna
we're
say
as
two,
we're
yeah,
seeing right now, it
yeah.
takes a while for the legal system to manage certain
Yeah.
issues that can
Yeah.
happen.
I was
So
gonna say in his defense, like Hell's Kitchen is incredibly corrupt. It's like, man, the firefighters are starting fires. Like, like
it's
it's
incredibly he is, you were comparing to Bruce Wayne a little bit. I do think he's a one of the more Batman-y kind of figures in terms
definitely.
of Marvel, despite, not having tons and tons of money. But a- and so here's the thing is that both both characters highlight the fact that not everything can be solved and resolved in the courtroom.
Hmm.
But I think both characters also hit on the fact that there still needs to be we need rules and regulations and
Hmm.
systems and things that we can rely on. And so how do we get it so that the law and the legal system and these things can work for the people rather than one person here or there who is trying to corrupt or take over?
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. That's a good point. And then on the other side of that, you have Jennifer, who also comes into her position in a completely different way,
Hmm.
right? Because she had lost her job as like a lawyer, and then because of her superpowers, got pulled in to
Yep.
this new firm. Almost seemed like as a gimmick.
Oh
It
yeah, totally.
almost it almost felt like as a gimmick, but at the same time, it's like no, no, no. This is an
They even,
actual necessity here.
I mean, they even made her show up as She-Hulk
Yeah,
to go to work. Yeah.
yeah. It
There's
did.
definitely a gimmick to it. On the flip side, on the flip side, there's also the very big reality in these shows that there are superpowered people. And how do we make sure that we're lining things up as best we can within those rules and regulations and structure? And so it seems like that was a way they were trying to resolve that,
That's true.
was okay, let's create a space for all the superhero people to
Yeah.
do the law and everything. But it does get a bit campy.
I do love that She-Hulk's the villain in the show was an alpha male chauvinist cult. I'm like, wow,
I know, right?
on the nose, but I'm here for it. Like
I know.
it
I
was
know.
pretty.
It was like they were like, we know what's coming.
We
We
know what
see you.
I hate that. I hate that. I'm like, oh, okay, who's the villain of She-Hulk? The Proud Boys. Of course they are. Like it's
Oh well, you know.
yeah, but I mean, and the thing is, I feel like she does a good job handling it. And it's also funny just how different their worlds are. Like she has an assistant getting the
Mm,
court cases together for her, and she has like a team of people that are helping her. And then on the other side, Daredevil has Foggy and Karen. Like
yeah.
they have those, but at the same time, like Daredevil, he hooked up with Karen, and so like there's something there.
Mm.
But then like,
And
yeah,
Karen's
and
got her own stuff going on. Yeah.
yeah, and so he like they're vastly different because this is a like um Jennifer's with a well established, like very powerful law firm,
At
right?
times. She does, because remember, so when shit hits the fan for these people, when shit hits the fan and things get leveled and you don't have much going, Jennifer is all about how do I bring this to the court and get fairness through the legal system.
Right.
And in fact, the people around her that support her, they're actually trying to convince her to do otherwise.
That's
Versus
true.
you got Matt Murdock, he disappears on his,
Yep.
right? He just plain disappeared. There's so many times they think he's dying and dead because things are exploding around Hell's Kitchen and
Yeah.
he's off, doing his own thing. Or even when he starts involving them and whatnot. I mean, he's often the one skirting around. Now, Karen's
Definitely.
got her issues too that come up later, but
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't need that influence to really go the more vigilante route
Right.
by any means. Now, I mean, like he gets stuff done, and granted, like you were saying, like Jennifer's definitely in a more it I think her show is really about, hey, things look clean and nice on the outside, but there
Hmm.
is corruption and there are these terrible things here. And how do we keep our hope in creating these structures and ways to manage despite those things going on underneath? Versus
Yeah.
with Daredevil, it's like there's just mayhem and corruption, and it's a very
Yeah.
Gothamy place.
Very go- yes, it's very Gothamy, and I'm not gonna lie. Jennifer Walters' world, it feels a little bit more white collar. Like
Oh, it's absolutely.
there's crimes being committed here, but it's not like on that level, which later on it does get to that like violent portion. I mean, Abomination's the villain, right? But at the same time, it's a completely different world that they're fighting in. Funny enough, like same city, very very different worlds though, because Hell's Kitchen is a mess. I mean, he even gets his suit from Wilson Fisk's tailor, who's just
Oh
like,
yeah. Yeah.
this is ridiculous.
Versus Jennifer's got some like fashion guru who, yeah,
Yeah.
who makes like ball
Yeah.
gowns for superheroes.
Yeah.
They're really they're what this is probably not what you're supposed to say anymore, but like they're from opposite sides of the tracks.
They
You
are.
know how like she definitely seems to she had like a stable upbringing. She's got the almost like annoyingly supportive parents. Uh this even when she loses her place and her job and everything, she goes back to her parents' nice suburban looking home, has a ground zero that she can at least have to bounce off of.
Right.
Versus Matt Murdock, when he's doing well, he's bruised, beaten, and he's got like fluorescent lights coming in from the window from like advertising
Right.
on the side of his building. And he's he they are definitely dealing with different things. And so
Yeah.
I mean, they are in some ways the product of the places they come up. They both believe in the law.
Hmm.
It just let's just say if their fling were to like come together and they were to hang out for longer, they'd probably have some clashes in terms of he would think she's naive, she would think that he's not utilizing and trusting the law enough. It would get complicated.
Superman and Batman. Yeah,
Yeah.
Superman and Batman.
Dude.
He's way more cynical. He is far more cynical. And she's still like, you know what? Truth, justice, and the American way. Like, I think
Yeah. And
they're
even down to
still,
like she's like invulnerable and he's getting beaten to a pulp. And
that's
dude, you're
true.
so right.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And yeah,
Yep.
he has completely lost faith in the system. And it's because of where he was raised, how he was raised. He has a strangely strong connection to the Catholic Church.
Mm,
but
yeah.
but yeah, it's this very different world. And at the same time, too, another thing that's different is Jennifer has a family.
Yeah.
Like she has a full blown like family that she has a decent relationship with.
Yep.
Like she's raised in a healthy environment. Like she did not grow up to fight crime. She did not grow up in
Yep.
this like gritty, messed up, corrupt world.
Yep.
And it shows. It shows she's not nearly as rough around the edges. She doesn't have that like intense anger and rage. Jennifer seems like someone that's been to therapy. She is like she's got it together a lot more than Matt does. Matt is like he's got some anger
So,
issues clearly, right?
I mean, they definitely hit it like she has anger. And that's
Yes.
one of the things I appreciate where anger is not an issue. It's what we do with the anger. How we act and react to it. That's where things can cause issues. So sometimes people get caught up in like anger is the problem. No, anger is a feeling. What happens with it? And so I love how they show her anger and they show that she even struggles at times. I mean, she hulks out at one point because, I mean, literally someone's showing a video of her having sex with someone in public during this like awards. It was like an
Yeah.
awful, terrible thing. She, of course, hulks out, as all of us would. And so they show that she can still struggle with her emotions at times. But you're right. I mean, she definitely seems to have a better handle on some of it. Now, here's the crux too, though is just like she hulks out when that stress point hits high enough. Compare, I mean, obviously a ton of stuff happens for her. Um, but compare like the amount of things that she's going through and the different things that are piling up compared to what we're talking about with Matt Murdock. And so I agree with you that he could use some therapy and that that Jennifer is probably um better able to use her support system, seems pretty clear. She tends to draw in her support system rather than pushing them away like Matt tends to do. She's able to find ways to be more her genuine self. versus with Matt, there's a lot of subterfuge, etc. So there are definitely things where I agree with you that he could use some help and support to growing into a version of himself that works better for him. And he's also in an environment that's a
Yes.
lot chronically and more frequently stressful, traumatic, all of these things happening where um who knows, like maybe if he was in more of now once again I think he's going to self-select in, don't get me wrong, I think he's going to self-select into the Hell's Kitchen environment,
Mhm.
but I don't know, I mean, if you took away some of that stress and some of those layers, like um let's say that you boot out all the corruption, or it reduces down to where it's just like a normal city's level of corruption instead of like Gotham level. That in and of itself would probably help him be able to manage some things better. So I
Yeah.
don't want to put all the onus on him because
Yes.
Hell's Kitchen, man. I mean, it's in the title there, right?
Yeah.
Like it's some rough stuff. And he, to his credit, he's getting up every day. He's doing what he can.
Yeah.
He got tired, and I mean even he talks at one point about how he tried to use the legal system. He tried to use the police and the law to help a young child, and it
Hmm.
did not work. And
Right.
just that pushed him into, I can't just sit here.
Yeah.
And so he he wants these things to be able to work in the law,
Absolutely.
and at the same time he's going to struggle sometime. He
Yeah.
If it's more nuanced and he's going to have to think about how to make it work within the law, he's going to punch people.
Yeah.
And so Foggy's got to pull it back and be like, hold on, let's think about how the law can maybe work for us.
And you see that he still does hold on to that, like, hope that the law will come through, because
Yep.
otherwise him and Frank Castle would have just gotten along way too well, right? But
Yeah.
he was constantly, like, he butted heads with Frank hard, because Frank was just like, how about I kill everybody? Can't be no
Yep.
corruption if there's nobody here, right?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
what if I do that? And of course, Matt is absolutely pissed at the thought of that. Like, he cannot stand
Yep.
Frank
And
Castle.
so
And
that I found so interesting because it did actually force Matt Murdock to become more aware again, post becoming a vigilante, once again become aware of, okay, but where did the lawyer side of me come from? Where did that piece happen for me? Because you're absolutely right. If at the end of the day he's sick and tired of the corruption and this, that, and the other, then wouldn't it be any means necessary? And then Frank Castle's way sounds really freaking great.
right.
But he really fights against it. And once again, maybe a little Batman-ness of it, of like, where's the line? And how do we make sure we don't become a part of the corruption? So
Yeah.
maybe that's part of it for him. But absolutely, there's definitely, he's not just like, let me throw it all to the wind. And being a lawyer is just me being completely fake and just
Yeah.
having that um that other side of me that I was gonna say makes money, but I don't think they really make much money. But you're right. He's not just doing it to come up with something to spend his time. Like he does care about it. He is passionate about it. I mean, being a lawyer is not the easiest side gig when you're getting beat up doing vigilantism. So there's definitely some passion points there for him, even though like a part of him also just really wants to be.
Yeah. That's a he's doing the best he can. I'm interested. I hope that they keep She-Hulk and his relationship going,
Me too.
because I would love to see, like, how they rub off on each other.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
would
Yeah. Yeah.
love to, yeah, it would be really interesting to see the way they go back and forth. Because also, I can't remember, because it's been I didn't get a chance to rewatch all of. Doesn't Foggy also at some point either get invited to or join a bigger law firm?
I don't remember.
Okay. I feel like something like that happens. I know that Foggy ends up being like a lawyer especially in the comics, he's a lawyer to a lot of superheroes. Like he is like
Ah,
that.
interesting.
He becomes like that guy. He's
Oh,
pretty
that's
awesome.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, it's funny because now it's almost like we have this spectrum of lawyers, because it's like you have Matt Murdock, who is like more vigilante than lawyer, and then you have Jennifer, who is like riding that line, mostly lawyer, but some superhero, and then you have Foggy, who is just 100% lawyer. And
Yep.
so all of them are good guys, but live very, very different
Yeah.
lives. It's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. I would also be interested to see how they rub off on each other. And also the vigilante side too. I mean, even with that, she's very new to it. She's very naive with it in
Mhm.
some ways too. And she can get away with a lot because she's the Superman
Yeah,
style, right? She bloop, here's stuff that happened to me. Okay, here
yeah.
I go. Versus Matt Murdock. Okay, granted, he sees in fire and whatever, but he also had to train and hone and do a lot of stuff and gets beat down quite a bit. So I loved seeing them interact as vigilantes where he's like, okay, so we're gonna stealth, we're gonna do this, and you just wait here. Da, 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 da. I'm
So
gonna
I
pick
can
them off
just
one by
throw
one. And
this
she was
door.
like, so you want me to wait here for like 45 minutes? So
Yeah,
she just goes in and hulks it out.
yeah.
And I did love seeing that. Now, granted, she's also causing a lot more like destruction of property and things.
Batman and Superman.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you think about it, like what she's doing could have more consequences in ways, even though she's coming from a less violent perspective.
Well, yeah,
So, yeah, it's definitely interesting how they tee off of each other. I agree.
yeah.
It'd be cool to see more of that.
Well, yeah, because I mean, it's like, okay, like Matt Murdock is like, yeah, and then I landed, and then I hit him twice, and then with a haymaker and a kick, she's like, and then I threw a freezer at him, and he didn't move anymore. Like,
Yep.
right? It's very, very different because Matt Murdock is like, they hit back and it hurts. She Hulk is just built
Yep.
different. She's yeah, and
Absolutely.
she has to. Her biggest issue is having to make sure she pulls her punches, right? Like
Yep.
she it's a very vast, it's a very different
Yep.
world. And I do love that they touch on like how, hey, she's different than Bruce Banner because she's good at keeping her temper down. She's
Yep.
always had to. She lives
Yep.
in a very she as a woman, she has a very different background than
Yep.
what
And not
Bruce
only that,
Banner had to deal with.
she was also going into law.
Yeah,
And so she was
had to be
there's
composed.
yeah, having to be composed. There are certain environments that for women you might have to deal with a bit more of a, let's just say, like some of the nepotism and other things that might be going on. And historically some legal systems can in fact look like that as well. So like
Mhm.
she's been in some tricky systems where she's really got to maneuver. So yeah, she has some really good control, and yet in other ways, like being Hulk is so brand new to her, she doesn't know what's going on. Like I think at one point Matt was like, "So, you gonna like leave a note or something about like destroying this parking lot?" She was like, "Oh yeah." And so yeah, I don't know, there's definitely a ton. And here's another thing though with Jennifer Walters that we didn't really hit on is she knows how to deal with the anger. But what she struggles more with is not so much being able to control whether she's hulking out or not, but the fact that she's treated differently depending on what is being presented. It's the same person, and people even know it's the same person. And
Mhm.
yet they'll accept part of her and reject the other part of her, depending on what's presented. So they
Yeah.
showed that with the dating, for example. No one wanted to go out with Jennifer for some reason. Like she was attractive and like super cool
Right.
chick. I don't understand. And
That
then
was
would love
strange.
She-Hulk, but then when they saw Jennifer again, then they're turned off and all this back and forth. And so it's interesting though, because you'd think that Matt Murdock would be the one. Now he does struggle, but
Yeah.
not as like his is more of a I isolate myself and blah, 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 blah. But he, in terms of himself and who he is as a person,
Yeah.
he feels much more like a solidified, complete person. And she, even though it's all out there for people, it's like there's this popular part of herself that she doesn't know how to integrate. It doesn't feel like a fit with the rest of her, and yet everyone else loves it. And uh, it's just a very she's struggling to figure out how can this all be me, especially because the people outside of myself
Yeah.
don't treat it all as me, even though it's hey, both times She-Hulk, Jennifer Waltz is me, but
Yeah.
other people are reacting to her in different ways.
Oh yeah,
And so
absolutely.
she's definitely much more piecemeal and trying to like figure out how to make that work.
That's a good point. And like I feel like she's doing a really good job figuring it out. Whereas every plot line in Daredevil is just him being messy. Like it's just it's just I'm not figuring it out. I'm still just punching and all my bones are broken. But as soon as they're not broken, I'm gonna go right back to punching again. Like it's
Yeah, he
he's
definitely
not.
and I mean like you said, I mean he has his routines. He has his rituals. Like going to the Catholic Church.
Mhm.
Uh or going and getting beaten up, or he really does, he gets stuck in his methods. And I mean it makes sense though. He grew up, it was just him and his dad, and against the world essentially, and having to I mean even his dad was breaking rules and doing things to get by. And so a lot of this stuff like makes sense how it's so ingrained for him. But yeah, it's he's still though, in spite of all that, he has a very secure core to himself. And so even though he in a lot of ways is not as healthy as Jennifer, she's got this kind of like anxious, neurotic energy that seems to come with just like feeling like a little bit misfit in her own skin.
Right.
And which they literally create an analogy for by talking about like her clothes not being able to fit based on if she's She-Hulk versus Jennifer, and literally having to find a way to be able to have clothes that fit her no matter what form she's in. I feel like that's a really good comparison to how she's trying to deal with just like who she is and the She-Hulk piece.
That's a good point. A really good point. I really hope Marvel brings her back because I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't think She Hulk got renewed
Mm-mm.
for a second season, but I thought her character was really interesting. I love the way she breaks the fourth wall. I thought that
So
was a lot
great.
of
She
fun.
does it in such a great way too.
It'd be fun to see her interact with Deadpool a little bit, I think. Like
Oh, that would be
in the MCU. I think that would be a lot of fun. But I am I think we should come back and definitely talk about this whenever the new Daredevil
oh for
show
sure. Yeah.
comes out.
Yeah.
I think that would be I think we it'd be really good if we were able to definitely come back and cover it and kind of almost do like a compare and contrast of like that Mike Murdock
Mm.
versus
They definitely
this
suggest
one.
like just like has happened in real life that time has passed. And because like what from what I do remember, he's like sitting talking to Fisk, and they're talking about just like that change over
Yeah,
time. So yeah, I think that would be really cool to hit on that again. And where is he at this point? And the more seasoned Matt Murdock, shall we
yeah,
say? I'm guessing they're not going to throw She-Hulk into that.
probably not.
Um,
They're
it
probably
it
not
would
because
be
it
great,
doesn't.
but I doubt they will.
Yeah, because I'm not gonna lie, She-Hulk was a very fun show.
Yep.
Daredevil looks like it's gonna be good. That the Daredevil trailer they dropped, it looks like it's gonna be good, but it also looks like it's gonna be dark, which it should
Well,
be. It's
yeah, it's
Hell's Kitchen.
Daredevil.
Yeah, it's Daredevil, Wilson Fisk. Like, there's nothing to
So
laugh
here's the
about
thing:
there.
they could totally make it work, and it would be awesome. But I think that I just think that they're probably going to back up from a lot of that. Unfortunately, a lot
Hmm.
of the really quality TV shows that came out when they were just
Definitely.
throwing too much out there all at once. And so there's a
Yes.
lot of really great shows that unfortunately I don't think those characters are going to
See the light
go
of day.
from here. But hey, you
Yeah.
never know. I could be wrong. I'd love to be
Fingers
wrong.
crossed. Right.
It'd be great. Cuz can you imagine if you take She-Hulk and you plop her into Hell's Kitchen and she's just like, what the heck is going
Yeah. But also she has nothing to worry about. Right. It's
on? Oh,
funny
yeah.
because
That
every
must be
time,
nice.
because yeah, it's funny because it's one of those things like when you talk about dropping Superman into Gotham for
Mhm.
like
Mhm, mhm.
12 hours and
Yep.
seeing what he could get done.
Yep.
Like I feel like you drop She-Hulk off in Hell's Kitchen. It's like, yeah, okay. Ooh, guns. Like it's it's one of those
Or,
things.
I mean, you say that, but like Joker went and said, "Okay, I can't be Batman. Let
He
me
did figure
spend
something
a
out.
day on Superman," and injustice happened. So,
Fair enough. Fair enough. The switcheroo does work sometimes. But yeah, it would be very interesting to see like where she could fit in the MCU because I mean she's an Avengers level superhero. She is. Like and so it would be really cool to see how she would interact. I mean, because I think the way that they ended She-Hulk was Hulk introducing his son.
oh yeah,
Yeah. And so I don't know what they're I don't know
who
if they
knows?
have a I don't know if they have a
I
plan,
don't think they have
but
plans anymore.
yeah, they keep introducing enough stuff that they're like, we can do whatever we want.
Yeah, yeah. Multiverse, woo!
Thanks for nerding out with us. I'm clinical psychologist Dr. Amelia Brown.
And I'm educator and comic aficionado Keaton Hopkins. Check out my TV and movie reviews on YouTube at Team JVS. Check out our website at bat-therapy.com, our Bat Therapy YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. And don't forget our Patreon page at patreon.com/battherapy. See you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.